So today we have a masterclass in conjunction with ILTA, how to work with a managed service partner to increase software ROI. So in terms of the agenda for the next 40 or so minutes, we're going to have very quick introductions, then go into a high-level introduction from the Pinnacle perspective around what managed services are and why we believe these are hugely beneficial to law firms. And then we've got the main event of the session today, which is a panel case study session in today's masterclass with both Dentons and Trowers and Hamlin, who are very pleased to say are both clients of Pinnacle's for managed services, where we're going to touch on a number of key areas around their managed service experience. So first of all, what were the sort of business needs and requirements that led to the initial discussions around managed services? Then some of the benefits of the managed service approach versus the more traditional project/services-based approach. Some of the tips and learnings that both Dentons and Trowers and Hamlin can share around working with an expert extended managed services team. The plans for the future for the two firms. So where do they see this potentially expanding their use of managed service out into other areas of product? And then also we're going to touch upon scoping and budgeting, how to get business buy-in, business case preparation, that sort of thing as well for managed services. And as I mentioned, we're also going to leave enough time as well to pick up some questions. So in terms of who's speaking today, I'm going to allow each of the panelists to introduce themselves. So Graham, if I can hand over to you first, please.
Sure, thank you, and nice to meet you all. Thank you very much for attending. Graham Bell, I have a background in, strangely, civil engineering, which I could explain a bit how I got to this point, but that might take a wee bit of time. But nevertheless, background in civil engineering, running through major infrastructure projects in UK and Asia. I moved from that into technology about 20 odd years ago. And over that period of time have worked as a CIO in various different organisations, both within the public and private sectors, including various professional service organisations, both in the legal sector and other industries. I joined Dentons in late 2017. I was merged with, or Macleay Murray Spence merged or combined with Dentons at that point in time. And I moved from running the IT services in Macleay Murray Spence to running one of Denton's major transformation programs. So over the last 6 years or so, we have been rolling out the firm's new business intake system, so based on the Intap Open product. And over the course of that period of time, have rolled that out to roughly 90% of the firm. And are nearing the completion of that particular transformation project, and it's moving into business as usual currently, which takes us nicely into the managed service piece. We have a few more implementations to do, so we'll be doing some in Australia and New Zealand fairly shortly. As I say, that will bring us to conclusion on the bringing the firm new business intake under one single system, which is a major sort of strategic goal for the organisation, to allow it to operate as a single organisation for its clients across the globe. And these transformation programmes, there's one on finance, one on HR, one on the business intake process, are critical parts of that. Based in Glasgow, although I spend my time working with folks all over the globe and very much enjoy the cultures and different folks you meet through that process. So that's me, and I'll hand back to Gareth.
Great. Thank you very much, Graham, and thank you for agreeing to take part today in the panel. Richard, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Richard Peacock. I've been in legal more years than I really care to remember, but it's 25 odd now. And I've been at Trowers for 6 years. We use both Intap and 3E. We've been live on both for just over 3 years now. And we use the managed services on both of those.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Richard. Tony, over to my colleague Tony to introduce himself.
Brilliant. Hello, everybody, and thanks, Gareth. Yeah, just really quickly, Tony Pullman. So I'm a director at Pinnacle and have co-responsibility for the managed services team here. A really important part of our business, and now quite a mature part of our business that has in the region of 20 to 25 clients and contracts, which is really exciting. And two critical ones of those are Richard and Graham from the clients that you're talking to today or hearing from today. So yeah, I'll be really brief, but a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Tony. And my name is Gareth Thomas. I look after sales here at Pinnacle, and I've had the pleasure of working with both Graham and Richard for quite some time at various other places prior to Pinnacle, and working within this general sort of technology sector with law firms for over 20 years now. So if we could move very quickly over to the next slide, please. So in terms of why we believe we're sort of well qualified, or I guess even interested to start with, to have this masterclass today, and why we think it's very topical at the moment, really, is that the use of law firms' managed services sort of mirrors and follows the growth and the changes that we've seen at Pinnacle. So historically, Pinnacle were very well known for implementing, upgrading, and doing lots of integrations around enterprise-wide products. So that would typically be Elite Enterprise, Elite 3E, potentially Aderant, Power BI, all of the Intap suite. But what we've seen over the last 2 years in particular is that once these firms have gone live on these systems, they've done the upgrade, they've got things integrated, quite often those firms will then come back to us and then initiate the conversation around managed services, because, and we'll come to talk shortly about the different reasons why law firms are interested in managed services. But we've really seen our the requirement from our client base come up out of the natural world of implementations, of upgrades, and of integrations. And managed services we see is just the next sort of logical step in how law firms are supporting these applications and working with their vendors. We could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So here's just some of the different applications that we support as part of our managed services. There are others not on the slide, but those are probably the core ones where the majority of our clients are based. And then if we could go through again, please. One forward again. So in terms of how these conversations initially start with people like Richard and with people like Graham, there's no sort of one overriding reason we find. It tends to be a number of different areas that the firms tend to face challenges in. And then when you get a number of these factors all coming together, then eventually you start to get almost enough of a groundswell to have these conversations around managed services. And so some of the initial areas will be around, projects finish, then quite quickly hygiene factors tend not to get done, systems can become unstable, firms realize maybe 6-12 months in they're not using the system as well as they perhaps should be. There could be single points or a single point of failure within the team. Firms maybe don't have the necessary skills to do day-to-day firefighting and support, as well as some of the more exciting project work. So we find there's not really one overriding reason that leads to a managed service discussion, but you can see across the slides there just some of the typical factors that come up, I would say, in probably 95% of the discussions that Tony and I are having with people like Graham and with people like Richard. We could go on to the next slide, please. So this is really the last slide before we dive into the masterclass panel discussion. So in terms of the managed service that Pinnacle provide to law firms, there are really 4 key areas that this service falls into. So BAU support, which as you'd expect is around second, third line support, fault resolution. Typically integrations would fall into this area as well. Proactive guidance. So quite often here, the subject matter will be around system and data integrity, sort of general maintenance, fixes, performance, that sort of thing. Continuous improvement. So how can we use this technology better? How can we ensure that we're on the latest or just the previous version? How can we ensure that our workflows are running as efficiently as possible, that our staff have the appropriate training, that the testing is getting done? And then finally, strategic change. So this is where we're able to help firms with some of their bigger, more strategic initiatives, such as on-prem to cloud, strategic advice about what peer firms are doing, and then really coming in and sort of looking at the whole processes that firms have got, and then lending our expertise around how we can help them review those. So that's the sort of reason why we have these discussions, what we can bring to the table as Pinnacle. But what we'd really like to do, which I'm sure you've all turned up to here today, is to listen from both Graham and Richard from their experiences. So, Tony, if I can hand over to you to kick things off on the discussion, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the first question goes to one of those early bullet points in Gareth's slides there. So I'm going to ask Richard first of all, and then Graham after that. What was it that was the business challenge that sort of led you to need managed services? What was the business case in your organisations to lead you to this?
Yeah, we had a couple of different ones really, because it was very different for us for Intap and for 3E. Intap, we had Pinnacle doing all the development work on it, and it's obviously a very heavily customized product. Basically, all the workflows you design from scratch. But we needed support for that, and because of the level of customization, we didn't have that in place. It was a new product to us. We haven't got anyone in-house with knowledge of it, so we clearly needed support. Initially, it was done through sort of normal consulting as and when, and it just became apparent that we'd benefit from having that continuous support there. So taking Gareth's point of it being sort of second, third line support, with us on Intap, it's almost more first line support. And we use that quite a lot. On 3E, it was different. We went live, say 3 and a bit years ago. We had the fun and excitement of going live during the lockdown, which enlivened the project and avoided other boredoms. But one of the things coming off that, it meant that the project tail, if you like, was a lot longer. And we kept consultant support around for a lot longer. So there wasn't as clear a end to a project as there was. But as part of that, we were realizing that because of the nature of a finance systems team, it's generally people who know a lot about finance systems, but they're not necessarily specialists in given areas. So we find, you get a query on templates, or we got a query on the data insights transformation or whatever it is. So really it was having access to somebody that can answer those questions, so that when you hit, in that instance, elite support, and they go, well, that'll be consultancy, having that prepaid up, so to speak, so you're not doing a statement of work for sort of 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, an hour's work. It's just having that support on tap. So that was kind of where we got to with it.
Excellent. That's brilliant. Thank you, Richard. And Graham, from your perspective, the same question.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, we had a number of kind of transformation programs underway in Dentons, and the organisation itself had grown very quickly over the last decade or so, and some of the supporting infrastructure was I guess struggling to catch up, would be the best way to describe it. So we had gone through on the Open programme, implementing this NBI process through its implementation, and we're progressively working through the various different regions in the Dentons firm, so gluing them together as we went forward. And that process, we were overly reliant on Intap and the project team to support the system going forward. And that was something that the firm was working on, if you like, to set up those central support teams. And for the Open programme, which was quite a long way down its road of implementation, to recruit or to build that team internally would just take too long, and it's a very challenging marketplace as well at the minute to recruit into that space. So a managed service offered a way of us setting that up very quickly and being able to plug a support gap that was growing in terms of the version upgrades and various other housekeeping tasks that you talked about earlier on, that when you're reasonably stretched as a project team or tightly resourced in the supporting functions of a business, tend to struggle to do those things on a regular basis. So the managed service offered us a way to set those things up very quickly, and allowed us to move into a more business as usual position with the Open system and some of the other transformation programs that are obviously coming down the road that are partway through implementation. They're not quite as far down the road of implementation. So that process of managed service setup has moved through over the last few months, and has enabled us to start to take the load off the project team, focus Intap on delivering to the last few remaining regions, and allowed Pinnacle to go through the knowledge transfer piece, set up a service, and get into a position where we're able to support the system more effectively going forward.
Excellent. Thank you both. Both very sort of common themes that we're hearing actually in the industry, particularly around the lack of skills available, and you wanted to get yourself going quickly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thank you both for that. That's really helpful. Appreciate it.
So, but both of you have just very kindly shared your thoughts around how the managed service has been able to sort of bridge the skills gap. How have you sort of seen the sort of becoming a trusted partner for delivery approach run in terms of the managed service and getting established? And Richard, if I could go to you first with that, please.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's a different story between the two systems for us. Again, it's been an interesting journey, but 3E, we had a lot of Pinnacle staff as the elite appointed reps on our project. So we had quite a lot of engagement with Pinnacle there already, and it made sense to roll into that, because you get to that situation of saying, oh, you're looking for, who knows about this, who can do that, who can do what. And because I've worked with, a lot of the Pinnacle team previously, for me on 3E side, that was just almost a no-brainer, if you like, because the access is there, that people know what they're doing, and it's just giving you that access. Because if you try to employ somebody for every area you're looking at to support yourself, it's kind of, who do you get, which area do you cover? So kind of the 3E side, the relationship was almost pre-built, if you like. So it was a very easy transition. Intap was slightly different in that we were dealing with the development team there, but I hadn't met any of the managed services team on that side before. But again, to me, the key to building any relationship like that is just open and honest approach to it. And one of the things that we find works best is there's no faff on it. There's no saying what you think somebody wants to hear or whatever. So we have those direct conversations, and it helps to build the trust quite quickly. And my team only took over responsibility for Intap last year, but I'd like to think we've already built the relationship there with the managed services team, and really it's just frequency of use and getting familiar with each other, how you work, what your expectations are, and things like that. But to me, the primary thing is just direct communication. Just being open about what the issues are and where you're at with it.
Thank you. And Graham, same question to yourself around becoming the trusted partner for delivery.
Yeah, no, sure. And look, I mean, I in my sort of experience of the IT world and CIOing for various different organisations over the years, there's a fair few providers who are buccaneers and pirates and have sailed the seas of the IT world, pillaging a bit as they go through the various different organisations. Now, I think the world has moved on a bit. I think a balanced partnership is a critical part of a contract. I wouldn't talk to an organisation I didn't think shared that same value. It is absolutely critical when you enter these sort of agreements that there is a mutually beneficial exercise to be had in terms of the service provided, and the payment for that service being balanced and at the right level for it. For Dentons, it's a fairly fast-moving environment. It's changing very quickly. I can't write a scope for a traditional outsourcing exercise in Dentons. It would quickly be superseded by events, and we'd struggle to nail the scope of the service down. So it was really important to us that we take a partnership approach from the start, and that the supplier who is providing that support for the system is capable of absorbing and responding to the various different challenges and intricacies and developments that will go through the lifetime of the contract. And obviously, when we sign a contract, as we did 6 months ago, for a 2-year period, that environment changes markedly over that period of time. And what you put down on paper at the start of that has to provide the framework that allows the partnership to grow and move and shift over that period of time to match the needs of the business and supply the firm with the underlying system at the right level of support that allows it to be the single organisation it is for providing services to clients across the across the globe. And that whole piece is underpinned by these sort of partnerships. And I apologise, I have two dogs fighting behind me.
I didn't want to say anything.
No, they know when I'm in a conversation or in a meeting, and they will just get me broad. And so once I stop talking, I'll go and get rid of them.
Okay.
Literally. Yeah, so the partnership piece is a really important part for me, and the ability to absorb change, be flexible, fit to the requirements of the organisation, even when they are changing and shifting really quickly, has been a critical part of the relationship for me, and really, really important going forward. And that I think is you can solve almost any other problem, but if you don't have the partnership, you're struggling from the start, I think.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you both. Kind of leads me on to the next question, because I suppose some people might say, well, why don't you just go down a statement of work, project by project route? What are the benefits you get from a managed service, I guess, versus, you know, that sort of more project-based approach? So let me ask you that question to you both. So Richard, where do you see the benefits of the managed service versus that sort of traditional project by project approach?
I think there are a couple of bits from our point of view. I'm probably one of the major ones on the 3E side, for example, is we're just in swing with our first major upgrade since we went live. We chose to include the upgrade costs in part of our managed services contract. So from our point of view, it gives us certainty of service delivery around that. You know, in essence, it smooths the payment over 3 years, but it means the resource is there and it's available. We don't have to worry so much about accurately predicting what hours we need as part of it. Obviously, there's hours assigned to that upgrade, but yeah, if we're dealing with sort of unders and overs, you're not immediately into an overrun, oh, let's have a new statement of work or anything like that. The whole point to me of the managed service is that it is not an even thing over, you know, every month you're doing this amount. It is done on, you know, going back to the trust point, it works because, you know, we trust each other with it. And, you know, if the volumes go up some months, they go down other months, and it does smooth out over the period of the contract. And so it gives you that flexibility, that instantaneous support there. You're not worried about it. Right, we've got this problem. What paperwork do I need to do this? Or we need a little bit of development work done here and there. You know, if it's something that somebody can do in half an hour, in half a day, up to sort of half a day, then generally speaking, we've got capacity in the managed services to slide that through. So it saves an awful lot of admin from my point of view, which is absolutely brilliant. But it's just easier to live day to day with that sort of thing. And you know, for the upgrade, for example, had I had to go through the statement of work process and get that signed off, it's another big number. These numbers keep coming up on programs we work on like this. Managed services just smooths that and makes it easier to get approval to do the upgrades and stay current and not risk lagging behind, things like that. So
yeah, makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Richard. Graham, hopefully you've got those dogs under control. Can I ask you the same question?
I've never had them under control. The triumph of lack of training shows in every way, to be honest. But they're lovely. They're very nice things to have around. Anyway, so yes, to the point. So we had become overly dependent on the project team. So I mentioned earlier on that we were using Intap's development team as a support resource at times during the program, and as a method of supporting a system, it's a reasonably cost and inefficient way to do that, and you're taking or diverting resources away from the goals of the program to deliver the program at the end of the day, rather than supporting the exercise. So we had gone through a lengthy period where we were too reliant on that sort of project-based approach to performing the support functions. So the managed service was specifically designed to remove Intap from that support function and do that quite quickly. So when we signed the contract back in March, it was one of the first and primary goals to move away from that project-based approach to providing support to the system and go to a position where we had a BAU type support service in place, and the managed service supporting that. That change allows us to be more dedicated on the project side. So some of my resources on the project team are just now shaking off the yoke of project supporting the system. And basically they will then move back into delivering the project and working with us, the regions, to finish off those various different deliveries. So it strengthens the project team, allows them to focus on the core goal of the project team, which is deliver the project, while also ensuring that we've handed the managed service off, or handed the support of the system off to the managed service to look after that and make sure it's cared for properly and the level of service is maintained and indeed improved as we go forward.
Brilliant. Thank you, Graham.
You're welcome.
Gareth, you just unmuted me.
Sorry, I was on mute there. In terms of the next question, then, we'd like to look at plans for growth of managed services within both Trowers and Dentons. Then, so where are you looking now beyond Intapp, beyond 3E, into potentially some other areas? So, Richard, if we could ask you that first, please.
Yeah, I think for us, again, sort of taking them separately, but on the 3E side, for example, yeah, we're doing this upgrade, but everyone's talking cloud. It's going to be the direction for both services. So there's the potential to utilize more of the services around that sort of thing. We also use Pinnacle's Time Policy Manager, to give that a plug for you. So there's potential for issues around that, but really, I think for me, the next thing we would look at is probably around the integrations piece, because that's where life just goes on getting more and more complex, and that would probably be the next area we'd look to go. We're currently having a review internally of where we go with what we're now meant to call business transformation. And there's going to be a lot of work coming out of that, both in terms of going to the cloud, but first of all, just being cloud ready. And as I say, sort of integrations are the major piece there, and I see that being a significant bit of work that we're going to have to look at. And going back to the point made at the start, trusted providers can be hard won, but when you've got them, it's worth working with them. And so from our point of view, I guess you could say you're in pole position there, because the existing relationship works for us. So it's logical we'll look to you guys when we need that extra.
Excellent, thank you. That's great to hear. And Graham, the same question about potential future use or expanded use of managed services within Dentons.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier on that we were in the process of setting up sort of central support functions for these various different systems, and the managed service that Pinnacle provides is that obviously a core of the Intapp open system. And providing the service of that. So there's some regional expansion that will come to that in the next few weeks and months. So we will move we're currently covering the UK, Europe and US time zones. The support for the Asian region, so Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, will come into play over the course of the coming few months. So we'll work with Pinnacle in setting that up. And that will take us into a essentially 24-hour, 5-day-a-week, give or take, setup for the Pinnacle service. So there's a significant expansion of time zone and service to be had there. We are in conversation around some of the other systems, so the finance transformation being most notable, I guess, in terms of moving that forward. The contract we have, I think, is a 2-year exercise. Now, as the central support function is set up and finds its feet, Pinnacle has a big part to play in the assistance in that and the establishment of that support service. And as we sort of go forward, the strategy is not yet set in terms of whether that might be a service that comes in-house in time, or whether it stays and grows as a managed service. I suspect probably the latter rather than the former, but that conversation is something that we'll take forward as we move the central support function into operation, and it starts to establish itself in the organisation as a function that's providing the necessary level of service to the organisation as a whole.
Great. Thank you both. Next question actually dovetails really nicely with one that's been positioned in the Q&A section from Josh. Thank you for that, Josh. Really appreciate it. But he's asking about the initial setup challenges. And the question I was going to ask you both was really about, have you got any sort of tips in terms of how you integrated Pinnacle into your organization? How did that work? What made that successful? So Richard, if I could start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think in part we kind of touched on it before, but I think just an openness and managing the expectations from both sides of the fence really as to what's available, what's expected. So introducing the teams, making sure people are aware who's who, so to speak. Being clear with my team who, what they're expected to do. So for Elite, for example, we still use Elite support for the ordinary day-to-day issues. Being clear on the understanding of what should be going to them, what should be going to Pinnacle, but just looking at how you manage it, I guess. Clues in the title, isn't it? Managed services, but having that framework in place. So we have a quarterly review meeting to check how we're doing, monitor progress, etc., etc. But to me, it's about not waiting for that. When you see an issue, you address it and you sort it out. And that's where it works from our side. Because I've got a lot of existing relationships there, I guess it really helps me. But, if I see something that's not quite right, I don't hesitate to call it out. But it gets dealt with really quickly. And it saves it's about avoiding those misunderstandings that build up with time. And if you don't deal with something straight away, it just broadens out the scope for misunderstandings, but also you can get a bit of sort of resentment, or why are they doing that rather than so and so doing that. And it's just avoiding those sorts of things. So really just going back to what we said at the start, open, honest, and developing that trust. Without that layer of trust, it's not going to work. And it just has to be. It just relies on that and the openness to achieve it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Graham, same question for you, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no, sure. So I guess you can divide the sort of Pinnacle service take on into kind of three stages. The first one was a knowledge transfer. The second was the project or the program taking on the Pinnacle contract, and the third is the transition into the central support services and the transition to business as usual proper, if you like. And each had its own kind of set of challenges and opportunities to work through. Certainly in the knowledge transfer piece, as in Pinnacle started to go through that sort of discovery process internally, you get the usual challenges and problems around you're trying to tap into people who are extremely busy, you're trying to get time and space with those people to get the download of information sort of thing. So getting over that hump of communication is difficult, and actually at that same time you're introducing the staff to the organisation as well. So there's relationships being formed that need some help and assistance to get over the hump, as Richard, you were saying. There's a why they're here, what they do, and all this sort of stuff. So you go through that kind of process. As we moved into the sort of project side of things, from the project team perspective, Pinnacle were extremely welcome, because they were removing some of the load from that team, and that was a very beneficial position. So they were enveloped very, very quickly and welcomed into the fold, sort of thing. The critical part during that phase was for the two vendors, if you like, so Pinnacle and Intap, to work together to transition the support that Pinnacle, that Intap were providing to the managed service. So that was going into its kind of business as usual place. We then have the final stage, if you like, which is the central technology support service being set up. And that has some new folks coming in, it has some old folks who have been there in the organisation for quite some time. And we have gone through that kind of process of introductions and rebuilding or building the relationships with both new staff and existing staff in that support function. So effectively, the program team is handing the Pinnacle contract across to the central technology services piece, and in doing so, we're continuing to support that, and we continue to provide a lot of time and happily support the both Pinnacle team and the central technology support team to ensure that the system has been properly supported. But as time goes on, we'd expect to, as a programme, to wind that back a wee bit, or just naturally fall back from that. So we're playing less of a role in the support. And to be honest, that is happening now. Actually, there was actually an incident on Friday where there was a service outage of a few hours, and unfortunately I was on holiday for that, so I wasn't even in the office. And historically, I would have got a phone call and been on the laptop from wherever I was and been doing my best to coordinate the issues. So at that particular point in time, that was picked up by Pinnacle. It was dealt with relatively smoothly within a reasonable period of time. There's a few learnings from it in terms of improving the process, as you might expect. We're still in early days in terms of the business as usual operation of it. But at the end of the day, the process worked pretty well. We got the issue resolved, and Pinnacle were able to provide the right level of service, if you like, and plug into the various different internal teams that had to be coordinated to resolve the issue. So, we're in that sort of position now where we've gone past the seed germinating and well, we're not quite flowering yet. We're doing a good job of getting ready for that and getting the thing properly established. So that was, in practice, example from last week where issues occurred and it was fixed without the usual having to put a blue light in your head and run around for a bit to address the issue. So it was that was heartening to see and good to see it resolved quickly.
Good to hear.
Excellent. Thanks, Graham. So just conscious of time, we've got about 5 minutes or so left. We've got one more topic that we wanted to touch on, and if we have time, we can maybe sneak another question in. But in terms of the sort of final formal topic we wanted to is really around budgetary process. And obviously, please share as much sense without sharing anything obviously overly sensitive here. But in your experiences within your firms, who tends to pay for the managed service? Which budget does it come out of? What's the sort of process for getting sign off, etc.? And Richard, if we could start with you for that, please.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest barrier to it, I guess, was trying to estimate how much we'd need the service and doing that. And we did that by looking back at how much consultancy support we had falling off the project, etc. And you look at that. Massive attraction of the managed service from my point of view is it puts in the IT budget. We had to have input from IT on that and understanding where that is. But it enables us to split the spend and identify the differences, what's basically the ongoing support as opposed to what we're developing and handling. So that was good. In terms of getting sign off, it's easier to look at because it's a longer term and you can explain the benefit of it rather than it being seen as a sort of a one-off big ticket item getting a statement of work through. It's just easier to explain internally and have those conversations. If you look at the cost of having ad hoc consultancy, etc., it's helped us just smooth the curve on that one, really. So that was the biggest argument in favour of going there.
Okay, thank you. And same question to you as well, please, Graham.
So the budgeting process in any legal firm is an entertaining challenge at the best of times, I suspect, and Dentons is no different to any other organisation in that respect. So the winning the argument, if you like, in terms of the business case for these sort of services was something that we had actually sort of done back in early 2020, to be honest, and unfortunately that then coincided with the pandemic, which immediately curtailed the budget we just agreed for the support service. So those unforeseen events obviously cause delays to the setup of these things. But I think the organisation can see the value of these types of services and can see the value of to set a system up or to invest the millions it takes to install one of these things and have it operating in your organisation, and then to not invest in the business as usual support that goes after that is a pretty short term view. And that funding argument that we made with the business case, which we won in 2020 and we repeated in 2022 into 2023, is something that it's difficult to argue against, and it makes perfect sense to do it. And as I've said earlier on, we're already seeing some of the benefits of that coming through And we see improvements in the level of service. We have less stress from the regions when they have issues with the system. So, you know, the budget argument, although a difficult one to initially get up and running, is really quite difficult to argue against once you get the arguments articulated and documented and present them properly to the right folks in the organisation. So that investment is decided, if you like, and it sits within the technology budget going forward. So, you know, we as a programme, as a deliverer of a change to an organisation, we hand over as I said earlier on, we signed the contract under the programme initially with Pinnacle. As we transition to the business as usual position, that contract and its costs are transitioned also to that technology budget, and it'll exist as an operating budget going forward, as you would any other aspect of technology going forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Just conscious of time, there's one question I think we could probably address quite quickly if that I know has been outstanding that came in. And this has come also from Josh. And whoever wants to dive in first here. So do you recommend a proof of concept project to test the partnership, I assume prior to engaging in a multi-year agreement? And I don't know who would like to quickly answer that.
Shall I jump in?
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit tricky to do proof of concepts, I think, in this sort of space, because you're setting something up that's quite intricate and requires quite a lot of process and establishment of both resources and the specifics of your organisation and the system that you're supporting. So I think the key is in the due diligence of the organisation. So I think, you know, if you're engaging any third-party organisation for a managed service, speak to their clients, get the inside track on how they get on with their existing clients, what that clientele is feeling about the services they have. The world is full of information on these things nowadays, and it's so much easier than it was 10 or 15 years ago to find out a lot more about a vendor and what they do and how they behave and all that sort of good stuff. So we also had the benefit that Pinnacle were involved in the finance transformation project, so we had a lot of dealings with Pinnacle historically before we started in the managed service conversation, so that we had the benefit of that knowledge, if you like. So we knew the cut of the jib sort of thing before we embarked on the managed service. So it's about relationship building as well. I mean, you go out and you speak to people, and if they are saying the right things and making you feel comfortable, then that makes it all easier to take the agreement forward.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Graham. And certainly from a Pinnacle perspective, we've been very fortunate to have already known both of your firms respectively across the different applications very well prior to the managed service. So I'm just conscious now that we've sort of come to the end of our hard stop deadline that we had on the session today. So just by way of very briefly summing up then, I think the sort of headlines I'm taking from the discussion today is really about the importance of partnership and flexibility within the managed service agreement. And then in terms of some of the sort of tangible benefits that you both of you have been able to enjoy working with Pinnacle in your respective managed services is really around the access and the ability to get to the appropriate skills and talent, an improvement in the level of service, and then giving the firm the freedom and flexibility to focus more on the sort of project work whilst allowing Pinnacle to pick up more of the sort of BAU standard support side of things.